Imagine waking up in the middle of the night with your heart hitting so hard that you can almost hear the echo in the dark. What if, from one second to the next, your life depended on running away or facing the impossible? In this story, each step is a risk. Every decision can be the last, and you will find that courage can come from where least expected. Before we dive into this journey, it already leaves your like and subscribes to the channel. It's just a click that makes all the difference. Now squeeze the belts and let's go straight to history. The darkness invaded the village and the silence was broken only by the cocks of frogs and the sharp breath of the wind by the loopholes of the blurry glass. I found myself on the edge of the fall, without being able to rest my chest. It seemed to sink, as if something grand was about to happen. The whole life, I learned to pay attention to my sixth sense, and that night, everything inside me shouted, "Get out now, or it will be late." The flash of shadows drew strange figures on the mud walls, and the strong odor of burnt wood mingled with the reheated coffee. My appetite was gone. From an early age, there was something wrong in that air. Shortly before dawn, I heard the dogs of the house next to howl, a way they had never used before. It was an omen that no one knew how to decipher, but for me, everything made sense in a snap. So, I distinguished hoarse and low, threatened voices. In the morning, it will no longer be here. A chill traveled my spine. "It's tonight," they said. My eyes opened in a start. My body. He trembled and my heart jumped in the chest, convinced that outside they could already feel my pulse. They spoke of me, and I realized that if I stayed, I would face a bitter end. In the midst of the chaos of my thoughts, the only certainty was that it could not underestimate those figures in the dead of night. I was unaware of its names, but did not ignore what they wanted. My whole life story passed before my eyes, traces of a past written on crooked lines. I realized that everything could get rid there, in that moonless night. I couldn't admit it to happen. I needed to escape, but every false step could be my ruin. My legs weakened and my head rode. I inhaled deeply, trying to tame panic. There was no time to separate belongings. I grabbed only my cloak, and in an act of despair, hid a small blade in waste. If it were inevitable, I would fight. But my greatest hope was to leave without being noticed. By leaving behind the house, or maybe the crack of the window. It mattered little. Anything was better than staying there. I approached carefully from the window, covered by the shadows of the room. Everything seemed calm outside. Too calm. Were they in touch? Waiting for quietly in some dark corner? The fear would throb my chest. The memory of stories that my mother told about girls who disappeared without traces returned to my mind. And now, I was one of them. The smell of wetland filled the air. The afternoon rain had dropped the soil. That was terrible for the race, but good for erasing my footprints. My trembling hands grabbed the lock of the door. The heart hammered in the chest. Either I escaped at that moment, or would never leave. Suddenly, a thud echoed outside. My breathing froze. Someone knocked on the door. My lungs refused the air, in pure terror. Who would be there? If I were to answer, maybe it was my end. If you stayed, they could break into the entrance. I had no way out. My eyes watered, but I refused to cry. Never I spilled tears of fear, just fury. At that moment I felt both, a panic that told me to me, hiding, but instinct shouted something else. If you don't leave now, you won't come out alive later. My choice. It was made. My body acted before my brain formulated any plan. Needed to escape. I needed to survive. I had to run. I restrained the weeping, opened the door in a momentum and an icy wind steal my face. My heart fired. From there, nothing more would be the same in my existence. My feet played the cold floor, and a shiver fucking my back of my neck. The pitch of dawn seemed solid, a cloak that devoured me. The wind, though cold, was just close to the suffocating heat of the dread that grew in me. My battings were so fast that I barely heard the noise around. I needed to escape from there. I had to hurry, but with every barefoot pass, there were memories that I had spent years trying bury. The truth hit me. It was not the work of chance. The destination charged what was due to him, and I knew perfectly the reason for being hunted. I knew why those men wanted me dead, and if I could survive, I would have to deal with this burden forever. Many years earlier, I was just a naive young woman, living in that region without knowing the cruelty of the world. I believed in the wrong voices. I trusted who it should not, and, without noticing, I ended up involved in something that did not belong to me. A powerful individual, dominant for revenge, I had included my name in a dangerous intrigue. without even suspecting. At that time, I served as a helper in his house, oblivious to the conversations of the corridors and the scared looks from the other servants. Everything changed when I entered a room at the wrong time and saw what no one should see. I discovered a dark truth, and this was my ticket just for hell. After that came the veiled scraps, crumbs, and uncomfortable silences. My life was for a wire and could not simply disappear. I needed the livelihood for my family members. Although, when the first big fright came, a woman in the house warned me in a hurry, "Run, run now, or there will be no return." So, ran away without looking back. I left my little belongings, my routine, my story. I spent years hidden, always fearing knock on the door. And now, after so long, they had discovered me again. It was no alternative but to make different from the past. I would not expect the tie to tighten. My breathing was accelerated as I followed the backyard, the sludge sinking under my feet. Every broken twig sounded like a stampede in the darkness. There was a single possibility: run. But where? No place was safe for someone like me. There would always be an informant, someone ready to betray me. It was then that I heard something that petrified my blood. Steps. They approached. A distant lamp illuminated the way. My body crashed. If I were captured, I would never see the sun again. I swallowed the panic, but there was only one direction: the dense forest. Better to face the unknown than to fall into their hands. I closed my eyes for a second. I ran into the lungs and ran towards the green darkness, feeling branches to tear my skin, the cold soil cutting my soul. The fear was my guide, and the past was in my fighter. I knew that escape would be just the beginning. If I really wanted to live, I would need to overcome everyone the limits. The forest swallowed me like a hungry beast. The air was thick and muffled. The smell of land and wet foliage penetrated my nostrils, along with the sweat of despair. My steps, sinking into the mud, they left a trail that I struggled to erase. Behind me, voices and screams echoed. Heavy shoes breaking twigs and running over leaves. They were close. My muscles burned with each movement, and my heart seemed to tumbarilla inside the ears. I wanted to stop, but stop meant to die. I went deeper into the woods, where the darkness blinded me. Any stumble would be the end. Suddenly, a noise on the left. My heart has froze. Someone was there. I shot myself behind a thick trunk, drowning the sound of my own breath. Soon after, a silhouette passed me. The man wielded a machete, paving the way between the vegetation. His look, attentive, hunted a trace of movement. I was shaking to the point of thinking that he would hear my dread. He stopped, breathed heavily, and it grunted something incomprehensible, then to move on. I was a thread of being discovered. When I was sure he had followed ahead, I resumed my escape, sliding between the trees slowly. Each step could trigger my capture, but I needed to move forward. The forest became my only, although dangerous. There were natural traps, slippery stones, roots that rose like claws, treacherous pits. In one of these, my foot was wrong and was thrown forward. I fell hard. I hit my knee and felt the rusty taste of blood when biting my tongue. I wanted to scream in pain, but I couldn't. Any noise would denounce my position. I closed my eyes, swallowed my despair, and tried to get up. The legs beat, the knee throbbed, but the fear didn't allow to give up. I needed to continue. The silence stopped again, but it didn't deceive me. I knew they were around, needed to walk, but my body burned with tiredness. My head was spinning for lack of food. If it passed out, there would be no return. It was then that I spotted a sparkling, weak, almost hidden by the darkness. A light was fluttering between the thick trunks. Without thinking, I focused on her. Could it be an ambush? Perhaps, but it could also be a chance to survive. Did you need to choose, risk, or succumb to exhaustion? I had no alternative left. I had not gotten there to fall without fighting. Carefully, I advanced towards the shine. With every branch I stepped on, my heart sounded like a drum, fearing being heard. Arriving closer, I came across a small rustic house, aging wood, improvised roof. There was smoke rising from a fireplace or chimney. Fear compressed my chest. Was it a friend, or someone even worse than the persecutors? I leaned against the trunk of a tree, trying to spy through the crack of the window. I saw a hanging lamp, and right next to a table, the figure of an elderly man, thin, cluttered white hair. It didn't seem hostile, but how many times have I been fooled by appearances? My body begged for rest. My wounds burned and the cold consumed my strength. Maybe he had a little water or food. Even if it was risky, I decided to try. With trembling steps, I approached. The ground under my feet. The man turned suddenly. I froze. He wielded a machete. "Your eyes," kids evaluated me. For a few seconds, none of us said. But then he did something unexpected. Tilted the head without dropping the gun and growled with a hoarse voice. "If she seeks shelter, enter. If you came to kill me, try and see." My heart almost stopped. He knew I was on the run. I wanted to run, but my body, it collapsed. Knees failing, vision darkening. The last memory was the door opening and heavy steps coming to me. Then the void dominated me. I had no control. My mind gave way, pushed by exhaustion, deep unconsciousness. No dreams, no voices, only the black man. Over time, distant sounds pierced the darkness, the burning wood crackling, the rumor of tissues being displaced, and man's harsh voice muttering something I didn't understand. A certainty came to me. I was alive. I tried to open my eyes, but weighed. I took a deep breath and added strength to wake up. The weak clarity of a lamp oscillated over me. I was lying on a simple treadmill, covered by a thick and smoked fabric by the smoke of the nearby bonfire. That brought some heat for the room. And the man? I turned my neck and found him sitting, sharpening the blade carefully. His expression resembled raw stone, an air of those who have seen 1,000 storms. He did not seem amazed or scared, just waiting. When trying to move me, the wounded knee protested. I moaned in pain, and he raised the look without interrupting the sharpening movement. "If you are struggling like this, you will only get worse." His serious voice was dry. "Take it." He pointed to a steaming mug beside me. The strong aroma of herbs mixed with cachaça impregnated the air. My conscience shouted to suspect, but I was thirsty and painful. I swallowed a bitter sip. The warmth came down, relieving the tension a little. I was still alive, but even when, the man watched me with tired eyes, as if he measured every inch of my soul. "Who you looking for?" he asked bluntly. My body hardened. I couldn't tell the truth. I didn't know if he was reliable, or he would give me. The answer came out brittle. "Dangerous men." He gave a brief laugh, almost sarcastic. "It's always like this here. Everyone has a story." We were silent. The blade sang again on the stone, producing a rough sound. "It needs more than rest to escape alive from this forest, girl," he said finally, rising and holding the machete at his waist. "But if you are willing to learn, maybe survive." My chest contracted. He didn't ask if I wanted to stay, or if trusted him. He just stated that my existence depended on it. It was bitter, but real. I had no alternatives. Without even waiting for my answer, he got up and prepared something at the fire, a piece of hard and greasy meat. The smell made my stomach snoring, denouncing hunger. He let out another brief laughter. He threw a toasted naco for me. My trembling fingers grabbed, and I bit without hesitation, feeling salted crispness. It had been a long time since I fed me right. He watched me, evaluating every gesture. "If you want to stay alive, you will have to learn to take care of yourself. Can you hunt?" he asked cold. My eyes crossed with his. I confessed, "Never." He withdrew an old bow from a corner. The wood was worn out, the ropes dry. "So learn." As soon as I finished eating, I tried to get up. The pain hit me hard and my legs gave in. He looked at me with contempt and threw a piece of cloth to me. "Tie your knee, or broken wingbird will fall." I bit my lip not to scream. I squeezed the cloth, feeling a gushing of pain. It would not show weakness. He offered me a canteen with a strong mixture of water and alcohol. I almost choked, but I felt awakened. It would need to be alert. It was still closed night when the man opened the door, pointing to the external shadows. "If you want to live, understand each sheet, every sound. Everything can be bait or trap. Listen to the wind, feel the earth. They have eyes everywhere." I swallowed. I knew exactly that "they" meant my persecutors. Made a gesture with the head, and he handed me the bow. First lesson begins now. The heavy object in my hand seemed to symbolize a new direction. I didn't trust that old man, but it depended on him to have a chance. Under the stars, I took a silent resolution. I would no longer be hunted. We spent the dawn training. To the first ray of sunshine, he led me to a clearing. "Let's see if you know if you move without being noticed. The best hunter is not the fastest, but the most silent," he taught. He walked through the woods like who merges with her. I, on the other hand, made noise with each step. "Do you think they are not sniffing you?" They don't give up while you breathe. The words were hard, but right truths. My past didn't leave me. A whole day of failed attempts made me think of giving up. But the determination grew. I needed to overcome my limits, or fall into the hands of those who hunted me. When the twilight embraced the forest, I heard the rustle of something between the leaves. The old man nodded for me to act. There was no error space. I held the arc, pushed, and let out the rope. The Zunindo arrow was followed by the sound of a fall. A small animal lay there, still moving. My heart almost stopped. I had hit. Run as far as he was, watching him pressed in the final moments. A mixture of triumph and discomfort me took. Had crossed the border between being arrested and hunter. The old man watched me from afar, in silence, but the brightness in the look revealed approval. "You learned," he said, without celebrations. He stared at me, as if to say that, from there, I could finally defend myself. We returned to the cabin with our conquest, which became a meal. The strong smell of roasted meat on fire lit my hunger and my spirit. That night, it wasn't just food, but freedom. In the following days, training intensified. The old man made me follow every animal footprint, learn the cycles from the forest, find out how to advance without being noticed. "Here, everyone is hunting or hunter," he repeated. Me, remembering that I had no choice but evolve. He walked with the certainty of those who know each tree. I tried to imitate, still stunned by fear. "His past did not disappear," he said in a late when the bruh covered the treetops. "You only postponed the meeting with him." These words worried me. I wanted to believe it was free, but it was enough for a whisper of the wind to, remind me. They still hunted me. There was no way to hide me forever. I would have to face truth that held me. One morning, as I learned to distinguish footprints on the trail, I heard a serious noise. The old expression closed. "They are here," he whispered. My legs were bampered. In a few moments, I saw the figures emerge. Firm steps, thick voices. They were so close that I could almost feel your hatred. The old man pulled me behind a large trunk. "No panic," he warned. But mine heart insisted on tumultuar. That noise sounded familiar to me, and suddenly he appeared. The tormentor, the one I never forgot. I didn't even have to see your face completely to recognize the cruel aura. My lips dried up. The man stopped in the clearing, his eyes walking the woods. The threat was clear. He had come hunting me again. The old man moved slowly, putting himself in front of me. Your posture, it denoted alert, but not fear. The man did not seem amazed. He knew me, knew my past. "Estella, don't hide. I knew you were here," growled at the man, the voice as a razor. My body cooled. Listening to my name in his mouth made all the traumas reappear, strong as a punch. The old man launched a silent warning, squeezing his fist over the machete cable. "You won't take it." The man stopped, evaluating the old man. It was as if he measured his opponent. The silence was cut only by the dried leaves wrinkled under their boots. That was not just a physical confrontation. It was a hit of accounts. I took a deep breath. "You already took me everything," I dared to say, with a trembling but determined voice. "I won't let it steal what I have left." A sarcastic smile sprang into his face, but his eyes overflowed contempt. "Do you think you can face me?" In slow steps, he approached. "Always I thought weak. You don't have the courage." Those words were like needles, but they stirred a fire in my interior. It was no longer the same submissive woman. "She has enough bravery," said the old man, facing the enemy. "And if you don't turn around now, you will be hunted." The man hesitated. It disarmed him for a second. Then he retreated, throwing me a poisonous look. "I didn't end with you," he threatened, disappearing between the trees. The forest resumed its silence. My body relaxed, but I still felt the trembling hands and my heart rapidly. The old man didn't smile. "It was just the first part," he murmured, and I knew it was right. The wind brushed the leaves, and a dubious sensation invaded my chest. Relief from living alive, and the certainty that it had not ended. I went back to the cabin dragging a mixture of exhaustion and hope. Facing the monster of my past, there was reopened wounds, but also planted seeds. The old man was thoughtful. Me, even more so. I realized that overcoming an enemy is easier than overcoming your own ghosts. But if I really wanted to move on, I would have to beat both. The next nights were quiet. The old man hardly spoke, but his presence gave me a comfort strange, a reminder that I could still fight if I wanted to. And I really needed to want, because the worst, it was yet to come. In a certain end of the afternoon, he stared at me more seriously. "You can become more than a fugitive. The forest has made you something beyond a prey, but it will have to choose. The words touched me hard. I had never thought of myself otherwise beyond someone who ran. But perhaps redemption was to admit that my freedom was not just about running away, but to face what plagued me. The shadows of the dusk stretched, and I sat before the fireplace, staring at the flames. Sentia, that something inside me was changing. The idea of facing the past no longer paralyzed me so much. If that man came back, I would no longer be just a victim. Fear did not disappear, but my fuel for courage. When the moon climbed to heaven, I nodded to myself. I, who once only thought of escaping, now I understood that the real force came from the act of choosing what to do with my destination. No one else would decide my direction. If they came to me, I would face. I could lose, but I wouldn't give way as easily as before. And so my narrative ends. If something in my words touched you, tell me in the comments. I want very much know how this story echoed for you. And if you think someone close needs to hear a message from resilience, share. Life is made of restarts, and each word can be the beginning of a new path. Remember to leave the like and subscribe to the channel. We follow together, learning and reborn with determination to each stumble.